Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. Time for another episode of Ask the Lawyer. Well, winter has taken hold in the United States, especially in the Northeast. And unfortunately, with winter weather, that can bring with it its own unique dangers, slip and falls, and that sort of thing. Well, here to answer our questions today is attorney Michael Greenspan of the law firm of Greenspan Greenspan, based in the New York City area. Mike, thank you for making some time for us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, so we're talking winter weather, ice, snow. There's all kinds of dangers involved there. Let's start with slip and fall. I understand there's been a new landmark case that just was handed down. I need you to put it in English. What does it tell us?
Sure. The whole point of what we as lawyers do is we want to hold a wrongdoer accountable for their wrongdoing, because it's because of the wrongdoing that people can get hurt, and often badly hurt.
Right.
So the issue is when you're in a city and you're walking on a street, or better yet, if you're walking on a sidewalk and you slip in ice, it's trying to find out who's responsible for that. Now, sure, the city of New York owns those sidewalks, but they're not going to be the ones responsible most often.
Why would that be?
Yeah, well, the reason is because the city has made a determination to shift responsibility for maintaining the sidewalks onto the owners of the property that abut the sidewalks. So the idea being is that the city really doesn't have the resources to keep those sidewalks clean, clear, and free of snow and ice or other debris. So the point is that it's the owner of the real property that has the responsibility. But what oftentimes happens is that, as you can imagine, real property in New York City is somewhat valuable. And those who own these things don't tend to be individuals. It's large corporations, banks, insurance companies, real estate investment trusts. So what has happened over the years is that these companies have said, well, it's not our responsibility. We're an out-of-possession landowner. It's not us. Look to our tenants or someone else. And so for a long time, they were getting away with it. Well, that all changed in October of 2019, because the city of New York had passed a law that said that owners of real property had a duty to maintain the sidewalks, and they had to do it in what's called a reasonably safe condition. So that meant that they were responsible for getting rid of snow, ice, dirt, or anything else that was causing a hazard on sidewalks. And the issue being is that now that the case has been decided by our state's highest court, these companies, which were the out-of-possession landlords, can't escape being held responsible. They are responsible for making sure that those sidewalks are clear. And sure, they may have tenants, and that as between the owner and the tenants, the tenant may be responsible for reimbursing the owner, but still, the injured person needs to have a responsible party that they can go after. Let's say you're just a private owner. It's 1, 2, 3 family home that's owner occupied. Well, the rules are different. You're not going to be held responsible, at least in the city of New York.
That's so interesting to me. So yeah, it seems like in some ways this makes it clearer, but some ways it makes it less clear.
It does, and it's part of our job to identify who that wrongdoer is and how can we hold them accountable. Because what we've talked about is, all right, so that happens in New York City. Well, what happens if you are on that sidewalk and you're north of the city line in a Westchester or Rockland County suburb, municipality? Well, now the rules are different, because each one of those towns, villages, and cities have their own codes. And not all of them, in fact, many of them do not put responsibility on the abutting landowner to clean and clear the sidewalks. And even if they do put the responsibility, they don't use the, quote, shall be liable for any injury language. That in New York City is what holds those owners accountable if they don't fulfill their obligations. So you and I could be walking in a suburban sidewalk and get hurt, and we could be really held out of luck.
That's crazy to me. Now, you've mentioned clearing snow and ice. What about frost heaval, where maybe the sidewalk is not level anymore? Whose responsibility is that to take care of?
Well, and now it's again, where are we talking about? Because if we're in the city, that landowner, if they know that there is a defect in that sidewalk, and it can't be something called a trivial defect. And without splitting hairs, look, if you need an electron microscope to see the difference, probably going to be held in elevation. Well, that's probably going to be held to be non-actionable, meaning you can't sue. But if it's significant enough that it's going to catch your foot, or if your woman catches your heel or anyone else, it's going to be the owner of that property who's going to be responsible.
What about, sometimes winter storms can last, there can be days and days of snowfall, or a couple of days of snowfall, and then maybe one day and it picks back up again. Is there any specification for the timeline that people are required to keep the sidewalk clear?
Yeah, and that makes one of the other parts of our job very difficult, because New York has something called a storm in progress rule. So that if somebody's out during a storm and they slip and fall, well, the owner is not going to be generally held responsible because it's still snowing or sleeting, as the case may be at that time. So the law gives the owners a reasonable amount of time after the cessation of the snow or ice activity. And it's interesting the words that sometimes these courts use, in order to allow them time to clean it up and make it safe. So we've been advising our clients for years, look, you don't want to drive on the roadways between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. because simply it's dangerous. That's when you tend to run into drunk drivers or people who are unsafe. Well, it's also the same things if you're walking around. If you're walking around in a city street at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's been snowing, or the snow had stopped only an hour or two before, you're asking for trouble.
What we've talked about so far, Mike, has been as far as related to residential properties. What about commercial properties? What about maybe a city-owned sidewalk that leads up to a grocery store or something like that? Are the rules different there?
When you're in New York City, that abutting property owner, again, we're talking about a commercial property, is going to be held responsible, assuming it's because of their failure to clear the snow and ice was what caused you to fall. So there's still have to, just because it's their responsibility to clean, it doesn't mean that their failure to do something is what caused you to fall. You still have to show that it was there for long enough a period of time that they knew about it, could have done something about it, and failed to do. But then let's say it's not only that the grocery store that's operating there, and they're the tenant. So it's going to be the company that runs the grocery store, as well as the owner of the property and any other subtenants. We have to find out all the identities of people who are possibly responsible, and then make a determination, okay, now that we know who's possibly responsible, who is it that we can hold accountable and for what?
And it seems to me then that's, as we start talking about this, Mike, I go, okay, this is even more reason, if I'm injured in a slip and fall somewhere, this is even more reason I need somebody like you to navigate this, because it just seems so murky and confusing as far as just trying to figure out who might be responsible.
It can be very difficult. And what makes it worse is when you've been badly hurt and you're trying to make these sort of determinations, you're facing medical bills. You're in a lot of pain. You've got to take care of your care. And then you have people from insurance companies, investigators, adjusters calling you, trying to get information from you and questioning you on some very difficult concepts when you're in pain and you're really not in a position to speak freely, carefully, and with reflection as to what occurred. So that it's very important to have a lawyer involved to protect you from these people, because they can get you to say things that, had you not been on medication, had you been in better health, you would have been able to clarify and not misspeak.
It would also seem to me getting somebody involved as quickly as possible is so important, because the site can change so quickly with the weather, or you fall down, they quickly come out and put some salt on that sidewalk before you've had time to take pictures or anything like that. So it would seem time is really of the essence.
It is. You want to document the scene. You want to get whatever information you can, and you want to be able to get it as quickly as possible, so that everything that can be obtained in a timely manner can be. And of course, look, this is the 21st century. We've got technology. You've got all sorts of cameras, surveillance systems, basically from the municipality or a lot of times from the private landowners. And what's really important about getting a lawyer involved quickly is that those surveillance films, the footage that they have on these security cameras, do not last forever. Companies sometimes have policies that they'll recycle them in 24 hours, maybe 48, a week. And if a lawyer is not there and on the scene quick enough, what I mean by on the scene, acting on behalf of the person injured, so that if it's me or any of the other attorneys who do this kind of work, we want to be able to notify that company. Do you have surveillance cameras? Do you have security footage? Preserve that film, because that will often be the best evidence as to what actually transpired. It's entirely possible that the whole slip and fall is captured on video. So then if you have that evidence and it's preserved, Now you can really effectively demonstrate your case, because if a case goes to trial, they don't have to take the injured person's word. Let's go to the videotape, as a very famous sportscaster in New York used to say. Go right there. That's what happened.
So I just have one more question, Mike, that kind of occurred to me just now. That so in the original of the case you were just talking about with the out of possession landowner, what if they say, hey, we subcontract with a company to come and clean the sidewalks in front of our building? They didn't do a good job. Your beef is with them, not with us. Is that a legitimate defense?
It sometimes can be, but remember, we have to face who's making the defense and as to whom. And this is what I mean. That out of possession owner has a contract with the snow removal company. Well, the snow removal company doesn't know me or my client. They don't say, they have no responsibilities towards my client, so they'll say. So now it's going to be up to the attorney to show that in the performance of that snow removal contract that they were supposed to do, did they make it worse? Did they, for example, plow the snow into this huge pile so that it started melting and then refreezing, and now there's this frozen river of ice leading from the snow pile? And that's what caused the person to be injured. Because when we talked earlier about holding the right person accountable for the wrongdoing, here it's the owner did what they were supposed to do. They hired a professional to remove the snow. And instead of removing it right, they made it more dangerous. So under that set of circumstances, as the attorney for the injured person, we're going to hold that snow removal company accountable for their actions. But ultimately, it's still going to fall on the owner, who's going to be ultimately responsible for that injury.
Right. It's fascinating and way more complicated than I thought it would be. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
As always, I'm here to help.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been attorney Michael Greenspan of the Greenspan Greenspan law firm in the New York City area. If you want the best information about personal injury, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, make sure to visit askthelawyer.com. Also, please take a second, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with askthelawyer.com.